The brand new PTB is out, and
Oh, hell no, man. What the man?
let's just say that I have a lot of opinions to give for this DLC. For me, the bad guys are what make or break a chapter, and in my personal opinion, the Skull Merchant is one of the most underwhelming releases in the history of the game. Let's start with what for me is the most obvious problem this character has, and that is the visual design. Most players expected a robot or a cyber character, since this was the first time the developers have given us a futuristic design in the form of high technology, and instead what we got is a purely human character, with the only robotic aspect of her being the basic weapon, which is an arm blade similar to the Predator. But to be completely fair, I don't think this is behavior's fault, and a lot of the times the community expects something, but behavior ends up releasing something completely unique that breaks our expectations. Back in the days, the community was convinced that the Huntress was going to be a Native American hunter throwing tomahawks, and she ended up being one of the best designed characters and probably the most iconic. So before I begin with the criticism, let's bring out some positives of her design. First of all, the basic weapon is something unique to DBD and using it feels very satisfying, at least for me. In-game, it looks pretty bulky, but the movements are swift and the successful attack also looks pretty cool even if it's simple. The second positive I have to give her is that her drones fulfill the futuristic vibe pretty well, and I like the orange lasers. They are flashy and at the same time they have the DBD touch of them being literally skulls modified to be drones, which is something very grim when you think about it. The final positive for the Skull Merchant is that we finally have a woman that is evil, something that many of the community have been asking for since all of the women in the game have a tragic past except the pig, Julie and Susie. But now let's talk about the negatives, and most people will agree with this. The Skull Merchant is one of the most underwhelming and least intimidating characters in the entire game, and it doesn't even fit the game at all. In fact, she is the only character that I think would fit perfectly in another game entirely, like Apex Legends or Call of Duty. Instead of going for the body horror or with the futuristic theme, she is a normal human with a normal body. Nothing of her body design stands out. She has no special prosthetics, which is something I expected from this character. Let's look at the first problem, her mask. What in the Call of Duty Cold War Diamond Mastery camo disaster is this? This is one of the worst looking masks I have seen in gaming, but instead of bashing it, let's try to see why the artist decided this was a good idea. If you read her lore, you will know that she is a self-made millionaire, a CEO of various businesses that she ends up selling for profit. And we also know that she is extremely competitive and wants to be the best. So the diamond mask was made only to be flashy and to show her status to her victims. My first problem with this mask is that it being extremely flashy makes no sense lore-wise for a character that is supposedly tracking their victims, stalking them, and later finishing them. Let's take a look at two characters that have white masks, Myers and Ghostface. Unlike Adriana, both of them have black cosmetics for absolute camo, and they also just stalk with a knife, not with a flashy drone and whatever robotic arm she would build that probably makes a lot of sound in the real world. A killer that is supposed to be stealthy should look stealthy, but her design does not imply that she is like that. Instead, what I get is that she's a brute force character, but her power does not reflect that. Now, if they're going to give her a diamond mask in order to have her be more flashy or to be cool, then why did they give her the most basic henchman looking clothing in the entire game? Her face tells one story, and her clothes tell another. It just doesn't make sense combined, and it's not intimidating at all. Instead of looking like a Dead by Daylight villain like the rest of the characters, she just looks like a random henchman found in a Marvel game. Every single character has something special about them in the context of the game. The Legion are some of the most basic killer design, and it still fits them contextually as they are basic teenager criminals that one day decided to do crimes. Trickster is also very basic, and yet he has a very distinct look as he has YouTube guidelines liquid all over his body, he has a violent looking weapon, and his eyes have glowing contact lenses which give him a small intimidating factor, but then he has a very well kept haircut, makeup and flashy clothes. And even his weapon is flashy, which is another thing I wanted to mention. How come the merchant's weapon looks so generic and basic and it's almost like it's taped to her arms? It's an industrial, military robotic arm, which is cool, I think it's cool, but why doesn't it also has diamonds or something flashy about it? Even her scanner looks military and not special at all. If they're going to give her a completely out of place diamond mask, then go the extra mile. Embrace her weirdness and add anime stickers to her weapon and a scanner, or paint it with whatever extravagant color they want. Trickster's weapon is a neon bat with a blade. It's extra, but it fits the Trickster. It's really unclear what they wanted to do with this character. It looks like a military character based on her visual design and her special map, but then she wants to look flashy at the same time with the most contrasting mask made out of bling and her long diamond pointy nails. And then the devs also want her to be hot so she can sell more cosmetics just like Vittorio. But what we end up getting is an absolute mess that makes no sense. Just by taking a look at her, would you say that she's a self-made millionaire weeb? Because all I get from her is that she's a mercenary with a military background. If the name Skull Merchant being so weird was not enough to make her feel that she doesn't belong in the game, then her visual design just reinforces it. By the way, fun fact, her name in Spanish is La Comerciante de Calaveras, which is extremely long. I actually like her name a lot, it just doesn't fit the character we got. All of the characters that have been released had their own personality in them. But the Merchant looks like we already have Predator at home with her drones, scanner and blades. But to be completely fair, after all, her visual design is purely subjective. Some people might find her cool, others might love her so much that they want to prestige her to 100. I am definitely not the target demographic for this character, so instead, let's talk about something more objective. And that is the power of this new killer. First of all, let's explain her power in the most simple way. Use your power to put a drone in place, and after some time the drone activates, scanning an area around them. You have 4 of these drones and you can place them after a cooldown. When the drones do not detect anyone, they enter a passive mode where they scan around for survivors and they activate again once they find someone. When they are in active mode, any survivors inside the areas get a lock-on progress. When they get the maximum amount of lock-on, they become exposed, with a very funny blood event called Caught in 4K. That's actually funny and I have to give props for that. You are also undetectable inside the active drone, which can give you some stealth opportunities, I guess. Whenever a survivor is inside a drone, you can see their location by using your radar. Now the interesting part is that the drones will stay there forever until you use your radar to call them back when you hook a survivor close to a drone or when a survivor hacks the drones. A survivor can hack the drone by interacting with it and with a very interesting and never seen before skill check system, which is the coolest part about this power by far. I really like this new skill check system. If a survivor fails the hack, the drone activates back again, and if a survivor succeeds, the drone comes back to the killer, but the survivors get a claw trap, which is basically a tracker. We'll call it a tracker from now on. The tracker will be active for as long as it has battery, and as a killer you can see them with your radar, and the survivors will know they're being seen by the eye icon appearing on top of them. When the battery ends, survivors can remove that tracker from their body. This is way too many words to say that this power is basically trash. It is by far the best tracking power in the game, almost rivaling the Doctor, because it is passive tracking and it's constant. So any person with more than one brain cell understands that the best way to use this power is just plant the drones on a 3-gen and that's it. She has no anti-loop powers, which is okay to be fair. We don't need a full roster of anti-loop characters that end up being boring or too oppressive. However, she's still a very boring killer to both play as and play against. You have all the information in the world, but you have nothing to cover the distance and nothing to end chases faster besides a survivor getting exposed by your drone. But guess what? She ends up just becoming a worse version of a past killer, the artist. With the artist, you can use your birds anywhere in the map to track survivors and know where they are. And at the same time, you can use them in a tile in order to counter looping, with the added benefit of being able to use it as a range attack if you have enough skill. The school merchant is just that, only her drones are passive and it takes longer to do everything, with the difference being that the artist can harass players from afar, whereas with the merchant you have to be there physically. And another character we can compare Adriana to is the Doctor. He has one of the best tracking powers currently and he can use it actively to find a survivor. But once he does, he has a chase tool with the static shocks that can make a chase easier. In fact, he also has passive tracking with the fake doctors that spawn close to survivors in madness or the random screams that the survivors do. Yeah, I know you can expose survivors, but so what? Ghostface can do this faster and takes advantage of it by being stealthy. Back in the days, people called Slinger a worse huntress, but that's it. He was not compared to any other character in the game. Merchant, however, can be compared with so many other characters as she is just a worse version of all of them. There is nothing she excels at except tracking compared to the Pig, Sadako, Myers, Ghostface, Artist, Doctor, and I could go on. If you are a console player and you want to try this character now, just play the Legion, she literally feels like that. The tracking system of the school merchant is also pathetic in my opinion. She uses a radar to see survivors, but what is the point in that when there are countless of perks that allow you to see the aura of the survivors directly? It is a counter to distortion, and maybe that's why they decided to do it that way, but it feels very clunky and way too much effort in a game where time is key. In fact, survivors know when you are tracking them. Why do they have that information? How come a futuristic killer with drones has worse tracking than a Babylonian plague-infested priestess by using her iridescent add-on and lethal pursuer? What I expected from a killer that can use drones is for her to be using the drones herself, to be able to fly the drones around the map and track survivors with a camera feed that maybe reveals their real-time location to the killer, or maybe even a drone that you can command to follow a survivor around with a limited duration and that you have to recharge later in drone stations so you can use them again. That just sounds cooler and more active than just placing the drones like hack traps and waiting for survivors to hack them. Think about it from a lore standpoint. The drones exist in the match only for survivors to hack them. How come a futuristic, highly skilled engineer gets her drones hacked by basic survivors? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why can't she have the drones fly higher so survivors cannot reach them? It's obviously done for gameplay purposes, I understand, but it's just dumb. Think of Deathslinger and how the chain from the Redeemer doesn't break with the walls. It doesn't make logical sense, but when you think about it lore-wise, it does make sense. The entity is bending the reality of physics in order to make Deathslinger more menacing and effective. If we apply the same logic here, then the entity is helping the survivors be able to attack the drones in order to make the killer weaker so she can track them manually? What? Is this what you expect from a futuristic killer using drones? However, she does have a saving grace, and that is her add-ons. I have to give huge props to Behavior for making some of the most interesting add-ons I've seen in a killer, almost rivaling Myers, Hag, Wraith, and Doctor. Each of them has a unique effect, and some of them are very interesting and provide really cool effects never seen before, like the ultrasonic trap speaker, which makes tracker survivors break pallets when fast vaulting them, and it's only a brown add-on. Or my personal favorite, the geographical readout, which gives you so many effects it's wild. But when playing her, even with the best add-ons, I come to the same conclusion. She is just a glorified M1 killer with no special skill involved. At no point do I think, wow, this play was only because I am playing the school merchant, as you can do everything she does with any other killer or any other M1 killer in the game, and that is sad for someone who is the first ever character coming from the future. There's so many ideas and concepts. I think she can still be fun as a killer since you do have interesting add-ons, so if you love killers like Sadako or Pig, then the School Merchant is an amazing pick, and I definitely recommend you buy her because you can have a lot of different interesting builds like a speed focus build, anti-pallet, stealth, aura reading, blindness, anti-healing, and she even has a skill check oriented builds and a iridescent which gives her drones a terror radius, so that's definitely a positive. And it just makes me more disappointed because she could have been one of the most varied and interesting characters in the game if only she had a different power. My personal favorite build that I enjoyed the most is her Totem Defender build, as I like that playstyle with the Demogorgon. However, you have to be extra campy with the totems since you cannot defend them from far away like maybe the Doctor or Demo can. Oh, and one last thing about her power. She has the worst Mori in the game by far. It's so bad that I don't even have to comment about it, you can see it for yourself.
No hope. I was broke. Did it dirty. No soap. I was gonna
make a manga website.
but now I kill him.
Some people claim that her lore is what saves this character's visual design. Well, I did read her lore, and I think it's one of the worst lores we have ever gotten for a character. And I am already waiting on Pixel Bush's lore dive, because maybe it will make me appreciate it more. But to sum up, her father was a Japanese mangaka that went to Brazil, and there she met her mother and she was born. She lived in a poor, modest household, and she was extremely competitive in school, wanting to be the best at everything she does. Sometime later, her family had even less money, so she decided to make a website dedicated to manga that gave her enough money to support her family, but she ended up dropping the project. She was also obsessed with her father's manga stories, which were dark and edgy. Her first evil urges came from a student that was better than her academically, and she decided to stalk him, investigate, and see what pain she could inflict to that boy. But she ended up not doing anything, although she did like the experience. One day, her father just left, leaving behind some of the mangas he never published. Now, up to this point, I actually really like her lore. I saw a lot of the community disliking her being obsessed with mangas, but I think it's an interesting situation that this game has not done yet. The trope of a psycho being obsessed with a video game or a movie which made them commit crimes in the name of that media. You know how back in the days parents thought that video games made people more violent? Well, she's just that but personified. My problem begins with the next part. So Adriana, in order to help her mother, started to study in the library, teaching herself economics and investments, and she became a millionaire by the age of 18. What? Did she sign up for Hustlers University? How did the writers just decided to drop that bomb and not expand on it more? She started to kill CEOs and later sell their business for profit? This just doesn't make any sense. CEOs will have a lot of protection in order to not get killed. The police will immediately discover that she was behind the cause. We're talking about entire businesses having their leaders killed, and she later takes her place. Like, it makes absolutely no logical sense and it's just trash. And guess what? Despite being called the school merchant, At no point does she sell something or do something with schools besides her drones. Her name comes after the name of the protagonist on one of her father's mangas. What? Her entire power, visual design, and lore is just behavior trying to fit as much trash as possible in the same character, and we end up getting a vomit of entirely different concepts, a jack of all trades but master of absolutely none. Why didn't they embrace her richness and attractiveness and make it so that she used her looks in order to lure high-profile victims to later gild them and sell their schools in the black market like a femme fatale? Why didn't they embrace her being a mercenary for hire, using her advanced skills in order to hunt people for a price like a futuristic deathslinger? And why not embrace her weebness by giving her an entirely anime manga obsessed personality? Give her an edgy cosplay and personality. It's funny how this DLC brings some of the most charismatic survivors in the entire game, and at the same time we have one of the most uninspired and boring killers. How come she doesn't have voice lines? I guarantee that if she dropped a couple of yuus after downing a survivor, that would have made her have way more personality than whatever mess we ended up getting. Even the survivors have voice lines, but the killer doesn't? Why didn't they give her edgy comic book villain one-liners like Wesker? You're telling me they gave a generic western cowboy and a generic medieval knight way more personality than a futuristic hunter? I even saw a thread on Twitter talking about how her lore is actually good because the point is that she's a failure. And I am sorry, but if you're telling me that a character that can become a self-made millionaire at the age of 18 years just by going to the library, or that she can successfully take out entire CEOs without police intervention, then I have to massively disagree on her being made to be pathetic or to suck. I don't think behavior made her to be pathetic, they made her to be cool. So since I complained so much about all of these problems, I will try to give some ideas on how she could have been done in order to, at the very least, save her. For her lore, I have 3 ideas that would have satisfied me, all of them focusing on one of the characteristics that the devs decided to give her. The first one is embracing her being a millionaire. She had everything she wanted to the point her life started to become boring, and so she used her money in order to hunt people just for the thrill, and later keep their skulls as decoration for her cool house. She could have used the skull of her first victim as her mask instead of whatever diamond bling bling thing she has on. Second one is embracing her evil nature. She was so competitive that she could not accept anyone being better, so she used her wits in order to kill her competitors in ways that the media accepted as being accidents. Maybe even the survivors discover that something is wrong, link the pieces together, and find out that she was behind the murders of everyone successful in Brazil. The third one is embracing her weebness. She was so obsessed with manga that she decided to become the hero of her dreams and recreate the scenes of her father's manga in real life, all of this in secrecy of her family. The media finds out that the murders are way too similar to her father's manga, and they start accusing him as a reason for all of these events, and so Adriana tries to solve this by taking out anyone that attacks her father, only to make things worse. Obviously, lore is something that is most of the time subjective, but I would still like to know your opinion on my ideas for her background, because I think they are way better than whatever they're calling lore. Next, on her visual design. I think this will be fixed with her cosmetics. I am a content creator, not an artist, nor a visual designer, so while I can criticize the design we got as a customer, I cannot create something better than the devs, I have to admit that. And as for her power, I think that she will get buffed either way, and I am hopeful for any changes the devs might give her. I thought of an idea in practice I would like to see, but I don't know how powerful or bad this would be in the live game. My idea is simple. Make it so that you can command and move the drones instead of having them parked, and maybe even buff her stealth part on the kit and make it so that she's invisible inside the drone's active area, and reveal her when she's in a chase, so she just cannot abuse the invisibility by putting a drone on a loop or when she is close to a survivor in case players find a way to abuse her invisibility. This way, you can start a match, drop 4 drones, and follow them, and survivors won't know if you're inside the drone that is approaching you or if she is somewhere else entirely. Maybe even give her a speed boost while she is invisible and make the drones fly faster to their destination in order to give her map mobility like the Wraith. The closest character concept that fits this design is Nuwa from Smite, as she can create a circle of fog and all of her allies become invisible inside. This would also give her way more lore sense, since she could camouflage herself as invisible in the lore in order to take out the CEOs and then hide, and that would make her scarier than she currently is. I know a lot of viewers are going to dislike this video only because I am complaining that this character is trash, and that must definitely mean that I hate women. The thing is, this is a live service game where I paid for a product, and now they're making new content that they will be selling as DLC, and a lot of people are going to purchase this for money. Even if some players get her with shards, a lot will buy a cosmetic for her either way. So as a content creator, I get paid by making these videos, and as a customer, I have the right to criticize the product that they are trying to sell me and say that it is bad and how I would change it. I don't dislike the school merchant because she is a woman. I dislike her because she is trash, no matter her gender. I hated how Vittorio was a medieval survivor, but he ended up just being a hot white dude to sell cosmetics. And just like I hated Vittorio, I dislike this character because it truly feels like she was made to satisfy the opposite target demographic of Vittorio. Instead of embracing her cool character concept, they just released a character with the only personality being hot woman girl boss. It feels like another Vittorio situation. So if it's going to be this way, then give her the most extravagant default cosmetic since Trickster, and not the most boring military whatever the hell she is using default with the most generic looking wrist blades that can be found in any mechanical horror saga or video game. There is nothing manga related to her character, she is boring. Even if this character was a man with the same lore and power, I would still have made the same video about how bad he is. Gender has nothing to do with this character just being a disappointment. The problem is that they wasted an amazing character concept into just releasing a hot character to sell cosmetics, and now we won't have any other surveillance killer from the future. In other words, a wasted opportunity just like Vittorio Toscano. And by making videos like this and complaining is how behavior hears our voice. We complained that Hadi was mistreated, and guess what? She got a visual rework to her face and portrait, and she will finally get cosmetics. We want our voices heard. Since we give money to behavior, we are the ones paying for their products, so at the very least, don't give us trash. I have no idea how they dropped the ball so hard, as the art team has always been on point with character design. Want to talk about bossy female characters? Let's take a look at Elodie or Yunjin Lee. Heck, I think Yunjin is a superior school merchant than what we ended up getting. Take a look at Hadi's Stone lore and how cool she was fighting evil monsters, or even Zarina risking her life for justice. We have amazing killer designs as well, and the best example of this is the Plague. We have a dominant woman who is rich and elegant, and this is conveyed in her visual design and her movements in game. She commands respect, she moves gracefully and with elegance. Even if she's literally rotting, she still dresses up in a magnificent dress and respect-inducing crown that fits her time period and context. That's what I call amazing visual design. Even the Plague has more personality in her animations and voice, and she was released back in 2019. No matter if you agree or disagree with the subjective parts in this video, there is objective evidence that this character was not done professionally and at the same standard as the killers released this year. She is the only character that has no spawn animations when starting a match like Sadako, Wesker, Dredge or Knight. She has no voice lines and she has no unique palette and generator breaking animations. I am not joking, she is reusing the same trapper animations of 2016. Oh, and I know music is subjective, but her chase theme is repetitive. at least make it sound like trance or techno. I do like her third radius a lot. I love cyberpunk robotic music and the third radius is perfect. And the worst part for me is that the rest of this DLC is wonderful. The maps are gorgeous, the two new survivors are amazing Brazilian representations and they have so much personality in their lobby animations. They have voice lines and they speak in Portuguese. Behavior even made a new lobby music for them, which is an absolute banger. It feels like Behavior used up all of their budget on the new survivors and maps and rushed a killer just to complete the chapter. And I hope that somehow Behavior redeems the school merchant in some way. As it stands now, this is the new Twins, where nobody is going to play her after release, so a dead on arrival DLC. But hey, I guess since the PTB just released, I cannot give my opinion on this character. I first need a PhD on School Merchant, memorize her entire lore and praise Behavior before I can say anything negative. So don't worry, I will re-upload this video once I have her Prestige 6, because I know no matter how many hours I give her, she is still going to suck.